Welcome back to another episode of GB Cast, my podcast that I do. Before we get started, thank you so much to everybody that's been watching the GB Cast, my viewers, subscribers, fans, friends, mods, as well as all of my amazing members. Big thank you to each and every one of you. And this week we are going to talk about Star Wars. Last week on the Vlogs channel, Riley and I did a review of Season 3 of Mandalorian. So if you're a fellow Mandalorian fan, feel free and check out that review. I'll link it below in the description section. And I have quite a few Star Wars reviews in my Star Wars playlist, as well as a few games that I have Let's Played. And coming up this week, we have a brand new Star Wars game, Jedi Survivor, which is coming out April 28th to the PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, as well as PC, Windows. It's going to be $70 US, and it's by Respawn. There's a deluxe edition for $90 US, which comes with a few other additional cosmetics. I'm sure most people will probably just get the $70 version of Jedi Survivor, unless you just got the money and you happen to be a hardcore Jedi Fallen Order fan. And I absolutely loved the first game. So yeah, Jedi Fallen Order is the first game in this, I guess, franchise. It is 5 years later after the events of Jedi Fallen Order. Once again, the main protagonist is Cal Kestis, played by Cameron Monaghan, and it is the Cameron Monaghan. I know there was an article that came out that people were making fun of from a so-called gaming journalist site that didn't seem to get the joke that if there ever was a live-action Cal Kestis, that it should be played by Cameron Monaghan, because he's the one who voices Cal Kestis. He's the one that mocaps Cal Kestis in both games. But apparently humor and actual research escapes some people, especially when it comes to the gaming journalists. So yeah, the return of other characters besides Cal Kestis, according to the trailers. BD-1, his trusty little droid. You got Marin, she's back. Sari, along with Grease, and of course their ship, the Mantis. And with it being 5 years after the events of Jedi Fallen Order, I think that puts them in the same timeline as Andor. I think it's the same timeline, and perhaps even Rebels. I could be wrong about that one. And or maybe Obi-Wan. Maybe it's Obi-Wan Kenobi, the miniseries, and Andor, because I think those events are happening roughly around the same time, about halfway between the events of Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, and of course Episode 4, New Hope. So it's going to be a lot darker times for Cal Kestis. The Empire's gotten stronger, hunted down more Jedi, and they're obviously after Cal because he's one of the last surviving Jedi out there. Of course, you have a few other Jedi. You have, you have Ahsoka. She's still out there. You have the characters from the Rebels. It's like Jedi just keep magically popping up. Like, seriously. You got to kill off Jedi, Disney, Lucasfilm. I'm just saying. It's the dark times, and yet characters keep surviving the dark times. There's also going to be some weapon stances that is going to be kind of cool. So you'll be able to fight like single-bladed with the lightsaber, double-bladed like Maul, dual-wielding, which is my personal favorite, because if I was a Jedi, I would want to dual-wield, kind of like Ahsoka does. But apparently dual-wielding is like the weakest one from what people have said. Individuals that have actually got a chance to go out and try out Jedi Survivor. There's also going to be crossguard, very similar to Kylo Ren's crossguard, and the ability to use a lightsaber in conjunction with a blaster. Plus, there's going to be a lot of cosmetics and customization options. So that's going to be really, really cool. I saw like some people able to give Cal Kestis different hairstyles, different facial hair, different hair color. I think somebody even gave him like a freaking mohawk. Or like a mullet. I think it was a mullet. I think I'm just going to keep Cal bog standard for my playthrough. And by the way, originally I was going to stream Jedi Survivor. And I was also going to Let's Play Zelda Breath of the Wild. I know, last week I had a different opinion about that based on what happened with Nintendo striking certain channels over Zelda content, but I have pulled a 180, and I did stream Zelda Breath of the Wild over the weekend, so I am considering continuing with Zelda Breath of the Wild as a Let's Play. I want to finish that before I ever play Tears of the Kingdom. I know it's off topic, but my original plan was to start recording my Breath of the Wild playthrough, well, pick up where we left off with Episode 9. However, Riley's playing Advance Wars 1 and 2, and we're taking a little trip to Texas this week so that I can drop her and the doggo off before the big move next week. So yay, I got a 6-hour drive Wednesday and then a 6-hour drive back like Friday, Saturday. Hooray. And then another 6-hour drive in about a week in order to haul myself and my cats down to the new house in Texas. And, well, before I leave, the movers are going to come in and load up everything that we're taking with us. I've been putting things in boxes. A lot of the furniture will go into the pod, and the pod will get shipped down to Texas to the new house. So anyways, she's going to be taking the Switch to play Advance Wars off stream. I think she'll probably do at least 1 or 2 more like Advance Wars streams before we leave, but after that, she's most likely just going to be playing Advance Wars on her own. But if she takes the Nintendo Switch, well, I can't Let's Play Zelda Breath of the Wild until I get my hands back on the Switch, which will be after said move. So, I'm going to Let's Play Star Wars Jedi Survivor instead. Hopefully. When I get back, hopefully I get back from Texas, trip 2 to Texas. Like a week ago was trip 1, or was it the prior week? But the point is, whenever I get back from Texas, hopefully either Friday or Saturday, while I'm doing final preparations, boxing up anything else that needs to be boxed up, I will take some time, hopefully, to record some Jedi Survivor episodes, because I do want to play Jedi Survivor. I'm excited about it. So that will be a Let's Play. Now, that, I guess, moseys us over, or segues us over, to the next topic of today's GB Cast, which is favorite Star Wars games, because obviously I do love me some Star Wars. I have an entire playlist dedicated to Star Wars, from video games to the movies that I've reviewed, all 9 of them, by the way, along with some of the TV shows, including, once again, The Mandalorian. So yeah, I'm a pretty big Star Wars fan. And I have played quite a few Star Wars games over the years. By the way, if you also are a Star Wars fan who loves some of the Star Wars games that have come out, feel free and let me know below in the comment section what are some of your faves. Just put them down in the comments. And I have quite the list. I will not spend too much time on each one of these games that I'm going to mention, but I have played a few more Star Wars games besides what's on my list. It's just that there have been good Star Wars games, there have been okay Star Wars games, and then there have been horrible Star Wars games. Just a reality. So let's start off with, I guess, the earliest Star Wars games I remember playing. Now, there probably were Star Wars games prior to Super Star Wars on the Super Nintendo, but I'm going to go, that's as far back as I'm going to go, as the Super Star Wars games. You had Super Star Wars Empire Strikes Back, and of course, Super Star Wars Return of the Jedi. My friends and I loved playing those games back when we were kids. I remember sitting at one of my friends' houses, and like he was a lot better gamer than I was. And he was just like getting hardcore through Super Star Wars Return of the Jedi. And I could get like a certain like way through it before I would fail miserably. It was a very, very challenging game. But that's probably the first Star Wars games I kind of remember playing back in the day. And one of my personal favorites from the golden days of Lucasfilms on my PC was TIE Fighter. I loved TIE Fighter. I also liked X-Wing. I did play X-Wing. I just didn't like X-Wing as much as TIE Fighter. So in case you're all wondering, TIE Fighter X-Wing franchise was in the 90s, and it basically put you in the cockpit of, first off, the Rebel Alliance as a pilot in X-Wing. I think it was a Y-Wing. I think maybe even like a like a T-95 headhunter. Was it a T-95 headhunter? And A-wing, B-wing, etc. But the sequel to X-wing was even better because it puts you in the cockpit of TIE fighters. You are fighting for the Empire. And it's not one of these games where you start off fighting for the Empire and then you have a change of heart. You switch sides before the end of the game or halfway through the game. No, you're in the Empire from start to finish. It's from the Empire's point of view. You are a pilot. You start off with a regular TIE fighter. Eventually, you get a TIE interceptor. You get to fly in a TIE bomber. And there's a few other spaceships that they made specifically for TIE fighter. Well, the TIE Fighter X-Wing franchise. You also get to fly the TIE Advance, similar to Darth Vader's. And you also eventually get to fly in the TIE Defender. And a lot of things were introduced in TIE Fighter. Well, to me personally, like I just mentioned, the TIE Defender was introduced to me in TIE Fighter. And Grand Admiral Thrawn, he was the main character in the TIE Fighter games. You had the Emperor, he was there. You had Darth Vader. And the voice actor that voiced Darth Vader was really spot on. He was almost up there with James Earl Jones. Like, you can't replace James Earl Jones. I mean, he's very iconic. But the voice actor for Darth Vader in X-Wing wasn't as good. So props to LucasArts for replacing that voice with somebody that sounded more like James Earl Jones than the first voice actor for Vader. So Vader definitely sounded a lot more convincing in the TIE Fighter game as opposed to the X-Wing game. So you had the Emperor, he had some scenes, you had Grand Admiral Thrawn, you also had Darth Vader, and it was a cool story. And there was actually, like, you were fighting the Rebel Alliance, but there was also a mounting insurrection within the Empire itself. I think the Admiral's name was Xeris. Now, this isn't canon anymore. I wish it was. But, like, Xeris was plotting to overthrow the Emperor and become Emperor himself. And so you're fighting at first against the Rebel Alliance, and eventually it gets to the point where Grand Admiral Thrawn uncovers this plot because Xeris on multiple occasions has tried to capture or kill Palpatine as well as Darth Vader. And that's the first time I heard about Darth Vader, and Coruscant was in the TIE Fighter game. That was the first time I became aware of the planet Coruscant, and it's almost accurate to what it looks like in the prequels and the Clone Wars, but that was the first time I heard of Coruscant, the Imperial capital world, and the first time you see, like I mentioned, Grand Admiral Thrawn, and there was something else that just went over my head, but there was a lot of firsts in X-Wing, so definitely some interesting lore. Plus, they had like a really cool like patriotic theme to the Imperial March. It started off like whenever it would do the opening scrawl, instead of the Star Wars theme, it would be the Imperial March theme. But then it went all like dun 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 dun, and then it would kind of go like more patriotic sounding. It would sound more uplifting. Very very nice twist. And hopefully one day we get a series based around like Palpatine and Emperor Palpatine as well as Vader, or I don't know. But anyways, that's me just going on and on about TIE Fighter. I love TIE Fighter. And then there was X-Wing versus TIE Fighter. That was kind of cool as well. Another great game that I absolutely love playing on PC was Dark Forces. I love Dark Forces. Kyle Katarn, Jan Ors, love them too. Unfortunately, they're no longer canon thanks to Rogue One. But the irony is I love Andor, and I love Rogue One even more now because of Andor. So I'm kind of okay with it now. But back then, you had Kyle Katarn and Jan Ors. They were the ones responsible for stealing the Death Star plans prior to A New Hope, along with the Moldy Crow. I think that was their first ship. I think they had Moldy Crow, then Ravenclaw. But, you know, like Kyle Katarn was kind of like this soldier for hire. He was hired by the Rebel Alliance, but eventually he became like a hardcore member of the Rebel Alliance. But he started off doing it for money, but he was very skilled, him and Jan Ors. And this was during a time when, you know, Wolfenstein 3D, Doom were becoming very popular, and LucasArts made their own version of those games, but it turned out to be really, really good. It wasn't just another one of those clones. it actually felt good. It had the Star Wars theme. You actually could run around these bases fighting and shooting Imperial stormtroopers and officers. And the Dark Troopers were first introduced to me in Dark Forces. And of course, the Dark Forces franchise spawned, an entire series itself, like Jedi Knight, Dark Forces 2, which introduced the Dark Jedi. And I think this was before we officially knew what Palpatine and Vader were known as. We didn't know really what they were during the 90s. I mean, maybe some people that read the books hardcore knew they were Sith, but Dark Jedi was what some people would just call Vader and Palpatine, because we didn't know what their official titles were. What were they? We know what the Jedi were, but we didn't know what they were. Well, now we know. But back then, it was like Jedi Knight Dark Forces 2 was set after the events of the original trilogy. So it's very similar to the Mandalorian timeline. And it once again follows Kyle Katarn, who turns out to actually be Force sensitive. His father actually was a Jedi. And he has to go to the Valley of the Jedi, and Jan's there as well. And there are, some remnants of the Empire, and that's another place I think that I first personally heard about the Imperial Remnant versus the New Republic. And instead of Sith, you had these Dark Jedi out there causing problems. And Kyle Katarn had to go and deal with the Dark Jedi and learn the ways of the Force, and he ended up getting a lightsaber. And of course, you had two other games, Jedi Outcast as well as Jedi Academy. And I think both those games also brought Luke Skywalker in more, so you had a lot of Kyle Katarn and Luke interactions, which was really, really cool. But yeah, so that's the Dark Forces franchise. Absolutely loved it. And even with Jedi Outcast and Academy, they would make it to where you could still, even though the idea went from basically, shooting with all these different guns and weapons, first person style, they made it to where you could switch from first person to third person when you were in lightsaber mode. And Jedi Knight, Dark Forces 2, as well as Jedi Outcast and Jedi Academy. So if you didn't want to do the lightsaber force thing, you could just switch to the other weapons. But yeah, that was a really good franchise. And some other games, Rogue Squadron, Pod Racer. I called it Pod Racer, even though it was just called Star Wars Episode 1 Racer. These two were really popular N64 games. And me and my friends loved playing these games. Rogue Squadron was really cool. Obviously, you were in Rogue Squadron, and there were missions that took place during the original trilogy. You would be helping with the evacuation of Hoth from the Empire, trying to take down the AT-ATs, which was challenging as hell, shooting the cable and spinning around the AT-AT. I crashed into the snow so many times. And then I think there was some post original trilogy missions, with the World Destroyers. They were these big giant floating boxes that the Imperial Remnant were using to destroy planets for the Empire, and you had to go and destroy them. I kind of remember it loosely, maybe not 100%, but I think the World Destroyers were also part of Star Wars Legends, so that was another thing that I learned. See, video games taught me a lot about Star Wars Legends and piqued my interest in going off and learning more about the Dark Empire trilogy, the Return of Palpatine, the Heir to the Empire with Thrawn, which is now being repurposed for the Ahsoka series. Hopefully the Ahsoka series will be good. But I absolutely love playing Rogue Squadron. And I know there's more than one Rogue Squadron games, but they were great. And the Racer, Pod Racer, I love playing Pod Racer. There was a sequel to Pod Racer as well. It was stupid. I'll talk about it in a second. But the original Pod Racer was awesome. You could play as Anakin, but you could also play some of the other racers that were introduced in Episode 1, Phantom Menace. And it wasn't just Bunta Eve track. You started with the Bunta Eve track, but then you would go to, I don't know how many worlds there were, or how many racetracks there were in Racer. I don't remember, but there were several different racetracks. And you raced, you earned credits, you could upgrade your pod, you could make improvements to it. And that was really cool. It was a really great game for its time. So I loved playing the first Racer game. The sequel is non-canon, obviously. It's set in between the events of Episode 1 and 2. And Anakin is involved in pod racing again. I guess he sneaks away from the Jedi Order from Obi-Wan in order to become a pod racer again. The concept is stupid, and the game is inferior to the first racer. So we'll just talk about the first pod racer game, which was really, really good. All right, so one of the bigger games that a lot of people still remember today, in fact, there is a remake of the game being made. I hope it turns out to be good. It's the reason why I got an original Xbox. I already had an N64 when Rogue Squadron and Racer came out because, I love Super Mario Brothers and Zelda Ocarina of Time. But the big reason why I got the original Xbox, because during this time period, I played on PC and on the PlayStation 2, KOTOR, Knights of the Old Republic. If there was a game that made you buy a console, it was Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. I loved Knights of the Old Republic. The whole world building, the fact that this took place thousands of years prior to the original trilogy with like two factions, like the Old Republic led by the Jedi versus the Sith Empire by the mysterious Darth Revan and Darth Malak. It was such a cool story. And I'm not going to spoil it because some people may not be aware of the story, and you're probably patiently waiting for the remake. And hopefully the remake is mostly accurate to the original story with very few changes, if possible. But it was just a cool concept because we took the Star Wars franchise in a completely different direction and went backwards in time. The ultimate prequel, I guess, is KOTOR. Now, KOTOR 2, a lot of people love KOTOR 2. I'm not as big of a fan of KOTOR 2 as some people. I had issues playing KOTOR 2. It was kind of buggy. I think it was rushed out the door. But the original KOTOR was my favorite. And I did play Old Republic. In fact, I got to beta test it back in the day. And it was all right, but it just wasn't enough to pique my interest personally. And I am happy that the Old Republic community is still out there and thriving, over a decade later. I think they still make cutscenes and content for Old Republic, and the cutscenes are absolutely beautiful. I mean, I love the cutscenes. I mean, I think some people have kind of put the cutscenes together to make like an Old Republic movie, which is great to watch on YouTube every now and then. But, I mean, I just prefer KOTOR. So a few other games I want to mention is the original Battlefront 2. People love the original Battlefront 2, myself included. I think that EA DICE turned Battlefront 2 around, their version of Battlefront 2 around, and I think it was a mistake for them to discontinue live service and content because there was a pretty good community around the new Battlefront 2. And the fact that you had these Disney Plus shows putting out new episodes of Clone Wars. They finally wrapped up Clone Wars. You had Rebels out there. You had the Obi-Wan Kenobi miniseries at this point, as well as The Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, Ahsoka coming soon, Tales of the Jedi, and there's other shows in the works, which would have been more potential content and material for them to incorporate in future updates as DLC for Battlefront 2. The ability to play as Din Djarin would have been awesome, Bo-Katan, Ahsoka, the list goes on and on. There's just missed opportunities that EA DICE had by just not having a team dedicated to continue with the live service of Battlefront 2. And I think that was a mistake. Now, I realize they've turned around Battlefield 2042, so I applaud them for that. Riley's been enjoying Battlefield 2042. But they could have kept Battlefront 2 going as well. It's a small gripe, but the original Battlefront 2 was amazing. And I love the 501st campaign. I really wish the 501st campaign was canon because I do like that arc that the story goes, like post Revenge of the Sith. And it starts in the Clone Wars and it goes into the events of Revenge of the Sith and marching along with Darth Vader into the Jedi Temple. It's from the clones' perspective. And, several battles that take place after the events of Revenge of the Sith when the Stormtrooper Corps becomes the clone troopers become part of the Stormtrooper Corps. And I don't know. I'm not going to spoil Bad Batch, but I'm not as big of a fan. My hair's messed up. Yeah, hold on. There we go. Is that right? I need a haircut. But anyways, I'm not as big of a fan of some of the decisions they've made in Bad Batch. I like the idea of what they do with the clones in the 501st campaign, where the Empire keeps the clones in service, But over time, obviously the clones, they get older, they get worn out because of, the age acceleration. And obviously clones die in the field of battle against resistance and the rebellion. And eventually their ranks are replenished by stormtroopers, like men and women throughout the Empire that are not as skilled at combat are trained as hard as the clones. I'm just saying. But overall, I loved Battlefront 2, not just the main story of the 501st campaign, but also like everything you could do in that game. Like I believe there was this ability for you, like because you had different like campaigns. You could do the Clone Wars era with the Republic versus the Separatists. You could play as droids or clones. You could play as the Rebellion versus the Empire. And there's like, it wasn't that big of like a RTS strategy style, but you did have the ability to go and take over planets with the Republic or with the CIS or with the Rebel Alliance or the Empire. And that was a pretty cool concept as well. All in all, I absolutely loved the OG Battlefront 2. So Revenge of the Sith was another really good game, and absolutely loved that game. And it was one of those very rare movie games, because there used to be this whole thing about movie video games that would come out, and they would just get studios to make them on the cheap and rush the game out around the time of the launch or prior to the launch of a movie. Like I think there was one for Batman Begins, and it didn't go over so well, but there's been quite a few of these movie games, and most of them were crap. Revenge of the Sith was good. And in fact, I think Fishy played a little bit of Revenge of the Sith a few days ago. Check out his channel; he's pretty cool. Also, check out Eckerd's Ladders channel and X Clips, good channels. But Revenge of the Sith was great because it had cutscenes from Revenge of the Sith, and I was so excited about Revenge of the Sith when I was still in radio that I bought the game and I played the Revenge of the Sith prior to the movie coming out, if memory serves, because I did go to Revenge of the Sith on opening night with some friends, and the projector was messed up, and it started off so awesome with the opening, battle over Coruscant, so epic and amazing, and then it froze, and we had to sit there for like an hour or two, waiting patiently for them to start the movie back up, and eventually they fixed the projector issue, and this was at midnight, by the way. The premiere of Revenge of the Sith. And there were people that obviously had to work the next day. Fortunately, I didn't have to. But there were people that had lives and stuff. I mean, what's life when you can, watch Revenge of the Sith before everyone else does? So a lot of me and my friends, we just waited. Like the theater was offering compensation. Like, hey, we'll give you some tickets. You can come back in a few days or a week to watch it again. Like, we're like, nah, we're going to stay. And so a few people did actually stay for that 1-2 hour waiting period. It was worth it, in my opinion, but I already knew a lot of the cutscenes because I had played through Revenge of the Sith, the video game, and I loved it. Absolutely did. And the scene where you could actually fight as Darth Vader. I call him Darth Vader because he's no longer Anakin when he helps Sidious take down Mace Windu. And there's like an extended fight scene between Anakin and Mace Windu as well. But when it comes to like Darth Vader, like in the Jedi Temple, that was pretty cool. That was pretty fun. And of course, there's also, as like near the end of the game, I think it's played canonically at the end of the game where you switch between Obi-Wan and Anakin. I don't know if you could play as Yoda. I think it was just Obi-Wan and Anakin, or Obi-Wan and Vader, depending on the part of the movie, right? Because in the beginning, yeah, you play as Anakin, but eventually Anakin becomes Darth Vader. But at the end, with the Mustafar fight, Duel of Fates, you play as Obi-Wan. But then, after you beat the game, you have the ability to go back and play as Anakin. Darth Vader, and you can actually kill Obi-Wan. And then you can kill the Emperor and take over the Empire. And during the cutscenes, they did intentionally edit certain things out. So there were certain things that you didn't see in the cutscenes. And they by the way, they used actual film from the movie itself for the cutscenes. Well, some of the cutscenes, like there's obviously like in-game cutscenes with extra stuff that might not be really canon. But then there's also like stuff they put in the game that was directly from the movie. And that was really cool. I'm surprised George Lucas actually allowed that. But I guess he knew how popular the prequel trilogies were and how many people were going to go watch Revenge of the Sith anyways. But I enjoyed watching and playing Revenge of the Sith. That was a surprisingly good movie game, so to speak. And finally, Jedi Fallen Order. I love Jedi Fallen Order. Played it whenever it came out a few years ago. And Kyle Kestis is a great character. And I look forward to spending more time with Kyle Kestis, along with BD-1, Marin, Siri, Greets, along with the Mantis, their ship. That was a great game. And admittedly, I struggled through Jedi Fallen Order. It's a little bit different, but it was rewarding at the same time. Plus, it exists in canon. Therefore, the story of Jedi Fallen Order and the story of Jedi Survivor are canon. Unlike some of these other games I've mentioned, like Dark Forces is not canon. So that's unfortunate because, like I mentioned, I do like Kyle Katarn and Jen Ors, but it is what it is. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing more time with Kyle Kestis, like what happens to him over the past 5 years since the events of Jedi Fallen Order, and what happens to him and the rest of the crew before the end of Jedi Survivor. I feel like it's going to be a pretty dark game. And I fear that a lot of them probably won't survive to the end of the game. But hopefully the story will be good and rewarding, and like the game looks beautiful. And it looks basically like Jedi Fallen Order, but they've made some improvements here and there. But Jedi Fallen Order on its own is a great Star Wars game. And yeah, I may have struggled with it. I wasn't the best at playing Jedi Fallen Order, and I got my ass beat so many times against Second Sister at the end. And I got beat by, was it Sixth Sister? I think it's Sixth Sister earlier in the game. She stomped my butt a few times. And what was the other dude's name? I forgot what the other dude's name you fight on. I forgot what his name was, but he was a fallen Jedi. He was a cool character too. So there was a lot of really cool characters they introduced in Jedi Fallen Order, including Second Sister. I like Second Sister. I think Second Sister is better than Third Sister. In fact, I feel like they just stole a lot of the concepts for Second Sister and repurposed it for Third Sister in the Obi-Wan Kenobi miniseries. And it's nothing against the actress that played Reva, a.k.a. Third Sister. I just didn't really care for her character as much. I think that her character could have been better, but that's because lousy writing failed her character. Unfortunately, a lot of times actors and actresses, they get unwanted hate for something they had no control of, like the actress that played Rose in Last Jedi. Like, it's not her fault her character wasn't liked. It was the writing that failed her character and her as an actress. She just did the best she could with the material she was given. So yeah, once again, I feel like some of the fan base, they get upset about some of these stories and some of these characters, and they take it out on the wrong person or persons when they should take it up with the director, the writer, or all the way up to Kathleen Kennedy, the head of Lucasfilm still for reasons. But yeah, Jedi Fallen Order, great game and great backstory. You learn more about Kyle Kestis while playing through Jedi Fallen Order as he learns his Force powers again, and he obviously becomes a Jedi once more. It's a good game. And if you're excited about Jedi Survivor and you have yet to play Jedi Fallen Order, what are you doing? You have like a few days left to go out, get Jedi Fallen Order, play through Jedi Fallen Order because it's the first game. Play through that, and then play Jedi Survivor. And if you want to check out my Jedi Fallen Order playthrough, it's on the Star Wars playlist. I may intentionally move up Jedi Fallen Order this week on the playlist, so I'll probably just bump it up to the top, all the episodes. So if you want to go back and watch me play through Jedi Fallen Order, feel free and do so. And there's definitely Star Wars cheese and lots of Star Wars salt for me. I get very salty sometimes when it comes to playing video games. You may have known that. Those of you that are regular viewers and subscribers, fans, friends, and of course, all my amazing mods and members. So, yeah, that's pretty much it for the GB Cast today. I do appreciate y'all watching the GB Cast. We're going to continue to try to put these out weekly, hopefully. And each week, I want to do like a different concept. Like last week, we talked Zelda and Nintendo. This week, we talked a lot about Star Wars and specifically Jedi Survivor, which is coming this week. I'm very excited about it. Got it pre-ordered, and I am going to be Let's Playing that. And maybe after I'm done Let's Playing Jedi Survivor, then we will go back to Let's Playing Zelda Breath of the Wild, and eventually stream or Let's Play Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. But I also want to stream Diablo 4 and a moving from Louisiana to Texas. Yeah. I just don't have enough time. But I managed to squeeze in just over, 36 minutes to sit down and do a GB Cast for you. But if you see any other content this week on the channel, it will most likely be YouTube Shorts. I'm glad some of you are enjoying the shorts. And hopefully by the weekend, I'll start pumping out some Let's Plays of Jedi Survivor. I'm very, very excited for that. But I can't promise that I'll put it out on a regular basis. I'll try to put it out every other day or a couple episodes a week of Jedi Survivor. It just has to work with the schedule with the move to Texas, and hopefully most of you understand, especially those of you that have had to move at least once in your life. But anyways, feel free and let me know how excited you are about Jedi Survivor, as well as some of your most favorite Star Wars video games of all time. Feel free and let us know below, you know where, in the comments section.